attends, à moins de quart, il faut que le public s'en aille. Le couvre-feu est à 11h. Et les gens disent, on ne partira pas, on ne partira pas.
Oh, that's brilliant. That is brilliant.
Comment dire, putain, le tension of the match, putain. Et le match va déjà être fini, il y a encore un quart d'heure, à moins 10, il faut que le public s'en aille.
That's totally ridiculous.
Yeah. 23h.
Is anybody coming tonight? Because JJ's cracked the TV watching, folks. We don't need Facebook anymore. Johnny's watching the tennis. Probably a few people are watching the tennis. I've been in the pool today. So I've had a hair wash. Is anybody there? Leanne's there. Yeah, I've cracked the TV watching. We don't need Facebook. We don't need another hero. Okay, so yeah, I cracked it. I'm going to tell you all shortly, but I might as well start now. Okay, so we all have, everybody has Gmail, right? You all have Gmail. So if you go onto Gmail, I'm just going to do it now, show you. Turn it off. Let me just turn that off. Okay. So if you go onto your Gmail account, at the bottom there, it says Meet. So what I'm going to do is, I think I've cracked it. If I go on to Meet, new meeting, start an instant meeting, leave the call, start a new one. Then you get that on the phone like you would on Facebook. So you can tap on the screen, make it bigger. I can then share the invite with all of you on email. And you just click on, instead of going into Facebook room, you go into Google Meet. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put YouTube TV on here. And then I'm going to show you. Okay. I'll do it with you, Leanne, while you're here. Okay, I'll do it with you because it makes it easier. So I'm going to send you an invite. Oh, who else is here? Oh, someone else is here. Very cool. Jane, I've cracked it. Okay. So I've invited Jane and I've invited Leanne and I've invited Heather and I've invited Lynn and Deanne and Carlene and anybody else who wants to come watch, and Pauline and Sheila and any more regulars on here that I can see. Obviously it won't be like you know, where everybody just come on and join, so I'll have to invite people, but that's okay. We'll just try it out for the first one. And so you should have an invite. Right. So you oh, hang on. Yeah, I shared it. Did you get it, Leanne? Did you get it? Did you get the invite? So you should have got an invite in which you can join the meeting room. I'm hoping this is right. Okay, I'm not Brain of Britain. So then that means I should be able to just turn that around. I know I'm the only one here. Okay. Okay, turn that around. And then we should be able to just watch whatever's on this screen here. Okay. Can you see it? I'm in. You're in where? Are you in my meeting room? Oh my God, this is fun. Okay, who's in? I had to download the app. Oh, well, yeah, but you've got Google Mail, haven't you? It's at the bottom of your email thingamajiggy. So can you, I don't know what you can see. I can't see you on my meeting. You're not in my meeting. I can't see you. Oh, to join the meeting. Oh, you've started a meeting. Oh, okay. You've started your own meeting. Oh, right. Okay. You have to install the app. Oh, they didn't tell me that. Hang on. Okay. Install the app. Google Meet. Secure video meetings. Secure video meetings. Okay, so let's do that. I think I just got I got the idea right. I just didn't quite get apparently I'm the only one here on my meeting. Is Jane still here? I don't know what's happening. Join with a code or hit meeting. Okay, you're supposed to join my meeting. I'm not joining yours. Everybody's disappeared now. Okay. Well, we're just trying it out. Mine hasn't fully downloaded yet. Just bear with me a second. Just bear with me a second. The idea is good. I still think I'm alone. Where's Jane gone? Jane, are you still there? She's probably gone away to try and download the Google Meet thing. Someone wants to join this call. Admit. How cool is that? Hang on. Let me do that. Hang on. So it works. The idea is good, which means actually we're all live, but we can actually watch TV as well. How cool is that?
So how many people can you have in here? Can we all just be in blocks?
I have no idea. We're going to suck it and see.
But I can't stay in here long because I'm in a classroom at work, and I've got employees here that are watching me do this.
Don't do anything you shouldn't.
So I need to jump off of this.
Well, but at least you know it works, and you can come back on if it's open. Just jump back in whenever you want. At least the principle is that we could be able to watch TV while I'm banned.
Okay, I'm gonna jump off. Okay.
Bye. Who's there? Is Janie there? Jane, are you still there? Jane, speak to me. Hello. Testing 1, 2, 3. Who is there? Just let me know if you can actually hear me. Now, we know it works because I just did it with Leanne, but Leanne's had to go because she's at work. So I just wanted to test it to see if it works. Okay. Right. I'm the only one here at the moment. Okay. Oh, yay! We got Heather. Hi, gorgeous. Hello.
You're right.
Yeah, we're all right. We're having to figure out a way to beat the Facebook blockers.
I was writing it. I couldn't see it because I hadn't got my glasses on, and I was like, what?
So did you have to download the app?
Yeah, download the app. If you press on the click, it'll take you straight into your apps.
We got another girl here. Where is she? We can't see her. It's the lovely Jane.
Exactly as what they had prescribed.
Someone's got their telly on. I can't see you, Jane. Are you allowed to see us, or do you not want to see us?
No.
Oh, you don't want to see.
Pajamas on.
Oh, well, that's fine. Okay, that's fine. So I'm just.
I've just got a desktop on with my PJ bottoms. I'm not bothered.
I've got my sundress on because I've been out in the garden all day. It's been 28 degrees here. Wow.
It's been really hot here.
Okay.
When my husband's working, it's gone really hot. It
So-
works outside, yeah. And
Yeah.
I said to him, I said, oh, by the time you come home, you'll be a right little black man.
Super!
Oh God, Johnny's watching the tennis. There's a lot of.
Super!
Okay, what's happening?
Hein?
What's happening?
Ben, ils ont dit, ils arrêtent le match. Il y a 3-7, ok?
Yes.
Et puis ils sont rentrés au vestiaire, les joueurs, ok?
Ouais.
Et ils ont dit, bon, maintenant, il faut évacuer, ok?
Non.
Et le public a dit, on n'évacue pas, on n'évacue
Oh
pas, on
my
n'évacue pas, on
God,
n'évacue pas.
no
Ok,
way.
et finalement, il y a autorisation du président de la République disant les gens peuvent
C'est
rester
pas
pour le match.
possible. C'est pas possible.
Si. Donc les gens restent pour le match.
Okay, did you get that? Okay, so Nadal is playing Djokovic in the French Open semi-final, and it's going into 4 sets. And the curfew is 11 o'clock now. I didn't even know that. I thought it was still 7.
No, 11 o'clock now. It went from 7, 9 o'clock, and now it's
Well,
11 o'clock.
shows how often I go out. So anyway, so they had to stop match because they got to that point in the match and it's 11:15. So we've got to evacuate the. So they're all shouting, "On evacue park, on evacue park. We're not leaving." So the president of France has given permission for the people watching the tennis match to break the curfew. I mean, it just gets.
Oh my goodness.
It's just getting more ridiculous.
How mad is that?
It is completely mad. So I don't know whether this will work, right? But I'm on Google Meeting Room. Now, what can you see? Can you see me? Or can you see my you see my telly screen?
Yeah.
Right, so if I turn that round, you see me looking at my phone. If I turn it back round that way, we should be looking at Wild at Heart, for example.
Yeah.
Can you actually see any different to what you normally see? Let's put it on and just make sure you can, because there's no point doing it if you can't see. This is my only plan of action. I am all out of ideas. That's like I have to find a solution. Is that what you can normally see when you normally? That's just the thing.
Yeah.
The president of the French.
Hang on, excuse me, we've got an
The
interloper.
president of the French tennis federation.
Attends, wait a minute, James.
Asked the Matignon and the president, okay, to have authorization to keep the public.
Yeah.
And the president said yes,
Yeah,
public can stay. All the French people are in front of the television.
But hang on, the president's in England at the G7 summit.
Yeah,
Yes, they call him.
They called him.
They call him.
There's no curfew for them and there's no self-isolating for 10 days, is there?
Yeah, exactly.
One rule for another.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. But listen, we don't want to get banned off anywhere else, Heather. Hang on, I'm just trying to put you into the holder. So Leanne came on to test it because she was first on, and you should be able to see pretty. I mean, I know you can't see the writing, but you should be able to see pretty much what you normally see.
Yeah.
Because I wonder if I can make you smaller. I'll pin you down there. Oh, what does that? No, I don't know what that means. Hang on, let me just see. I'm just playing, girls. I'm just playing. Bear with me. Right, if I pin Jane as well. Let's pin Jane. That doesn't really help much. I'm trying to get a bigger screen for myself.
So the 4th of August, I'm going out of the country.
Wow.
Try to.
And you're not coming back.
How long? I've got a one-way ticket at the minute. Oh my God, have you really? Yeah, well, we'll go and stay with my mother-in-law for a bit. Emma's cousin's getting married. and he really wants to go. You know, and it's a big thing.
Yeah, of course.
It's a big thing there. You know, as long as I ain't got to put one of their like traditional things on, I'm fine. I've got an outfit I want to wear. I know I'll wear it.
What?
You know, because
Sorry, what, Heather? What are you going to?
Okay.
What are you going for?
Well, we've got a wedding to
Oh.
go to.
Wow.
Yeah, we've got a wedding. No, it's a one-way ticket at the minute. I might be out there for a couple of months, but I'll still come on if the Wi-Fi and that's all right, the connection. I'll still keep in contact.
Well, get him to wire it up to to the. He can wire it up for free.
Well, let's put it this way. He's wired his parents and all his family and friends' houses up for free electricity.
Oh wow. Well, that sounds all right then.
Yeah, they never get electricity bill out there, that's for sure.
And just
Really? God. It's who you know.
And plus, we need, because like we've got 10 acres of farmland out there. His dad looks after. They've got a big massive farm. England's got 10 acres. That's our farm. It's a great farm. And they grow apples, pomegranates, peaches, grapes, you name it. They grow it, and it all gets sold on. So,
Wow.
plus he wants to, you know, work a bit with his dad there as well. So, which is understandable.
so has he given his job up, Heather? Has he given his job up?
He'll finish at the end of July. He'll finish for a couple of months until they get the undergrounds going for the next location. I don't know where.
Yeah.
Because they have to wait for all of them, digging up the roads, laying or whatever they do. And then he'll start on fibre optic.
Oh right.
All over in France with fibre optic at the minute.
Right. So
He'll probably come back. I might just stay out there a bit longer.
so is he on contract then, or is he like one of these consultants that joins up as and when, or just gets a contract as and when?
He's employed. They will pay him for his 2 months off.
Wow.
Well, that's good.
And then once they're all up and running, he'll go back to work. So,
Oh, because he's sort of on a sort of a natural break at the moment. So
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow, that's brilliant.
But no, we're going to rent a car while we're out there because I wouldn't mind going to Susan Hammermet.
Oh, do a video from Hammermet. My granny and grandpa used to go there all the time when they were like when they were, you know, married and back in the sort of 80s, and wow.
Yeah, I love it out there. I mean, I love Hammermet, I really do. My brother-in-law's got a house there. The house we rent here is Eamon's brother-in-law's, yeah?
Yeah.
And he's got the big farm. He's got a big farm in Catherine as well. And plus, he's got a house in Hammermet, which we'll probably stay for a couple of days. And it's right on the beach. And that's all I want to see.
Oh, how marvellous.
And put my feet in the sea. That's all
Lovely. It sounds perfect.
Oh.
Once I get there, you know what they're like with travelling and God knows what. It really annoys me.
Things can change, can't they?
Oh, yeah, just a bit.
Well, there are no planes going anywhere at the moment. That's the thing I can't get over. It's like everybody's posting that they've booked for August and they're having their flights cancelled. So how do you get to Tunisia from France?
How do we get it?
Yeah. Who do you...
We'll go from Morley Airport.
Yeah, but how do you get a flight? Are they running?
Yeah, they're running, They're running regular from here to Tunisia.
That's crazy. You can't even get out of England.
I mean, you think France, like where, like I noticed around Paris, it's like little Tunisia anyway. It's full of them.
Yeah.
Tunisian.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, no, you can't even get out of England. You can't get in England, you know. And then, like I say, with the G7 summit, you know.
They're allowed to go.
Yeah, he's wrong. He's wrong. No wonder somebody slapped him.
Well, well, it's funny because the French the French people have been quite quiet about it all. Really, they haven't made a big deal out of it. It was a bit embarrassing, to say the least. But it seems to be all unraveling, really, because you know they're all doing.
It was a right crapper. I thought it was I should laugh, but I thought, God.
Well, I didn't think he hit him very far. I didn't think he looked like he hit him very hard, and I thought, oh, I would have just gone a little bit further back, like on the forehand in tennis. I would have just given it a right wallop. He looked like he hit him a bit like a girl, but anyway.
Well, he got an 18-month sentence, didn't he? He got 14 months suspended.
Amazing, isn't it? They can take him in, and in a matter of hours, the guy's in jail. And yet you can do the most heinous crime, and you can be on remand for 3 years.
Yeah.
And or never get there, or you can be like Sarkozy and keep going to appeal and never actually get put in jail. But you give one slap to a guy. I mean, he didn't even do anything. I mean, I'm not advocating that we all go around walloping people, but you know, he didn't actually do anything really heinous, and yet he's sort of, you know, bang, within less than 24 hours, he's gone to jail. I literally do not watch the French news anymore, so I just don't. I can't listen to it.
You know what? I don't need to watch the French news because my mum keeps me informed. I don't watch. She watches in England. But she said, well, this is happening in France. That's happening in France. Have you heard? Oh God, no.
Well, that's like John Eagle just saying now about everybody's watching television to watch the French Open, you know, and I'm thinking, well, you know, there's still 5,000 people there that we can't go. Napo, come on, sweetie.
You know, we've only got another couple of weeks, and then there's no curfew. Everything's lifted apart from no more than 10 gathering in nightclubs. So you might as well just lift the curfew
altogether,
like he did, instead of putting it to 11 o'clock.
Well, in England, isn't it? What was I just going to say then? I read something, Jane, about the R rate or something. This ridiculous figure that they come up with for the reproduction, and it's gone up to between 1.2 and 1.4 or something.
Yes, there's another, I can't remember what they call it now. There's something else that's in the air, I think, at the moment. Deaths and hospitalizations and stuff, yeah.
It's another good reason
something else going on.
Your Freedom Day now isn't until the 19th of July now, is it?
Yeah.
Well,
it doesn't happen until it happens.
Exactly, and that means I've lost all my guests for summer, because if it's 19th of July, then the chances are that I'm supposed to have guests arriving on the 19th. So 19th.
On Facebook in one of the papers, it's been put back till the 19th of July. I mean, my mum said, she said, you wouldn't even think, she said everything's normal, more or less, like in Leicester and that, people are all out and about.
What's it like with you, Jane?
For me?
Yeah, what's it like where you are? Are you sort of going out as normal, or?
There are people around, but you still need to wear your masks. You know, the restaurants are not full. They're getting busier, but still people, I think, are very sceptical about joining in and whatever. Shops are, you know, sort of have their busy times, but I think a lot of people are doing it online. They've got into the habit, I think, of getting it delivered, and I think they're continuing that. So,
and I was
think the younger people are are perhaps gathering a bit more.
Yeah.
You know, like there was a gathering I think at the weekend. You know, sort of in the park. They're not doing any harm as such. I think they might be smoking, and perhaps there was a big box going or something. But they're not going beating the people up or anything. Do you know what I mean? They're just wanting to be in a bit of company. But there were definitely more than 6 of them.
Well,
So,
I mean,
a bit bored.
it just doesn't make sense to me, because I'm just watching. Oh, well, we were watching the tennis earlier on, and there was like, I said, well, how come there's all those people? I said, they're allowed 5,000 people. They're allowed 5,000 people now. I don't know, there's 25,000 seats or something. I don't know how many there are, but that means there's about 5 seats between people. But no, they're all sat together in one end. They're all sat together, well, at the 2 ends of the court. So they're not really separated. So I don't quite see what the point is. We're watching the football the other night. Well, I wasn't watching it, but Johnny was watching it. And I said, but there's nobody there. He said, oh, yeah, they are here. They're on the other side. So when the camera went round the other side, there's thousands of people, but they're all sat together, shoulder to shoulder. And I'm like, I don't get the logic. I don't kind of get the logic.
No. I mean, my son went to Wembley when for the FA Cup final, when Leicester won it. And I said, what was it like? He says, once you're in there, he says they were trying, but people just wanted the atmosphere.
They wanted to be together, Saturday.
They'd all got the masks on and things like that. They all just wanted the atmosphere. People want normality now. I mean, it's really getting people down now. I mean, like with Eamon working away, some days I think, oh God, I'm just sick of it. I'm sick of it. And when he called me and told me he'd booked the tickets, I thought, what the hell? We'll do what we've got to do and go.
Yeah.
So I thought, you know what?
Because sometimes, I mean, it's like.
Do you have to do anything? What sort of paperwork do you need to have to leave the country?
Need to test for 72 hours before you go. A negative COVID test. Well, that's not a problem. Well, I ain't even really socialised with anyone. He's been there. He's more at risk than me. So
ask them to do the saliva test.
Do you need proof of vaccine?
Pardon?
Do you need proof of vaccine?
No, not to go there.
Oh, okay.
No. And at the end of the day, this thing with the vaccine and flying, you cannot force people to have the vaccine. You can't hold people up to ransom saying, no, you can't fly unless you've had the vaccine. What's that all about?
Well, Caribbean Cruise Line, I was watching today, is it Royal Caribbean? There's 2 things about cruise ships today. One is the Royal Caribbean sent a cruise ship out of fully vaccinated people, and they had 16 people on board who got it, whatever it is, got 1 micromilligram of whatever it is in the nose. But the point is, they've got a full vaccinated ship and they've still got it on there. So what does that tell people? The second thing is, all the other cruise companies that go out of Florida have said, no COVID passport, no vaccine, no PCR test required. So the cruise companies now can be fully open, and they can do. They're not allowed to vaccinate. They're not allowed to make. They're not allowed to do any of it. It's been written into their state law, not just the mandate, but the state law. Eppo, come on, sweetie. He's barking and barking and barking. There's an animal out there tonight. I think there's a badger in the lane outside. Last night we were all having dinner in the garden, and he was whoop 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 every 5 minutes. No, but it's funny. We got all the garden finished today. The pool's up. I've been in the pool for the first time today, and I was like, "Oh, isn't it great?" The good thing is we've got no guests, so that means at least this year I can enjoy my own garden and go in my own pool. Because normally, we're sort of selling it off, and somebody's there all the time, and you're working and you're busy and you're cleaning and you're cooking and whatever. So you don't really have any time. Sometimes I go in at midnight, and just have a dip at midnight if it's really hot. But I was sitting in the garden today, John even mowed all the park. It was all beautiful, and my solar lights came on tonight, and and I've spent all day, and I've hoovered the whole house. I've been tittle-tattling around. Then it gets too hot and you don't do anything. I went in the garden and I was actually weeding with a sort of with a hoe, with a ho. Hang on a minute. I might as well turn you round. I mean, I can't see Jane, but that doesn't matter. I was only trying to see if you could see the screen, to see if we could have.
Yeah, we can see the screen. Yeah, it looks like it's going to work.
So what I was going to say was, while we're waiting for all our regulars, because all our regulars can't see us on here, because I don't know some of them. Does that make any sense? Some of them just come on through the page and join us, because there's normally about 50 people on a night. So on this,
right.
that sort of won't work. So maybe we could start watching that documentary series, because Pauline wants to watch it as well. The one I was telling you about, Jane, and you said, "Oh, I might be interested in watching a bit of that." Interesting. So maybe you could watch a bit of that and see if you like that, because I know Pauline. I don't know where Pauline is right now. She's probably. Hang on. Let's see if she sent me a message. Oh, actually 1 hour ago. She's because she knows that I'm not on every night. She's probably gone and doing something. Anyway, so I was out. So what was I saying? So I was out in the garden. I did all that. I was hoeing the weeds up because I'd left my watering system on all night yesterday. Oh God, I was in trouble. Anyway, it was all nice and wet. It wasn't soggy. It was just like, it only runs like drip, so it won't be much water. But everything was things. So I was weeding with my hoe, and I was sort of, how you hold the wooden handle and then you sort of scratching the surface and weeding, and of course I got blisters all over my hands because I didn't wear my gloves, and it rubbed all the between your thumb and your finger there, it's rubbed all the skin off. And then I've got another blister there, and then on this hand I've got another big one there, and another. And it was so painful. So I came off, and I've been putting this moringa oil on. This African oil, it's called moringa oil. And you just put it straight onto the raw skin, and it's already starting to heal. But I am off duty now. I am off digging duty for a day or so because it's so painful. Every time you get hold of the hoe, it's right on the bit where you're pushing down on it. So that was a bit of but it was so hot. It was like 20.
They say Monday here. Monday it's going to be 28.
Ooh, same as us.
Monday's going to be the hottest day of the week, so it says. Well,
we've got I think Monday and Tuesday are up to 33, and then we're gonna have massive storms on Wednesday. Apparently, it's going to be raining on Wednesday. So, but no, what I was going to say was, like Heather says, she's some days you just get so fed up because you don't see them. I mean, it's paradise. It's like, you've got a pool and you've got a nice garden and you've got, but it's so isolating. Even when you see your neighbours occasionally, you just feel like you're in this big space, but there's nothing in it. It's not alive. The space isn't alive. There aren't people asking for drinks or jumping in the pool or, the car going in and out, or there's just no noise at all. And it's like, it's kind of tedious. And I know that will be, when you've spent your whole life working, you kind of think, wow, it's great. If somebody had said to you, you can have 2 years off, you'd be like, wow, how fantastic is that, doing the job we do, which is very physical. You'd think that was amazing, but actually it's not quite as good as it's cracked up to be, because it's like you just miss that buzz of doing things and seeing people, and just a bit tedious, really. Wow.
Until he reached that age where he could go on his own with his mate, that was it. I was made redundant.
That's it. You've done your bit.
Yeah, I've done my bit. He likes it. I ain't got a clue about the game, but it because, you know, that's what you do. But, you know, he loves it. He's a big football fan.
What about your little grandchildren, Jane? Are they into sports or anything?
Yes, love. Yeah, my grandson, who's 9, is in a football team, a local football team, and he practices 3 times a week. And all my older boys, they're all into football. They'll be watching it tonight.
And what's on tonight then?
Then they play FIFA. Play FIFA.
Oh, they're real football nuts.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, football.
Yeah, that started. See how we're doing that.
Are you a reluctant football grandma then, Jane, or do you just like, you know, enjoy it as well?
No, I enjoy it as well. I mean, when I see my grandchildren now, it takes me back to when I used to take my boys to their matches.
Yeah.
You know, because and their dad was into football. He's into table tennis and so they're all a bit sporty. My other grandson, who's 8, Alfie, he went to Southampton Sports Stadium yesterday.
Wow.
And went on the pitch with some coaches and stuff. So he's into, you know, sort of football as well. He's not in a team, but he does little courses, you know, and so he loves it. Yeah, he loves running. He's going to do the 2K in Brighton, I think, coming up. I think
You see,
in October. So
the good thing about that is Charlie's mad on football, and my sister, they live in Sheffield, and my sister had the lawn taken out. They put an extra bedroom on the house in the attic. They sort of built on an extra shower room and bedroom, so that was supposed to be for them. But actually, the kids end up on there on the telly and lounging around on the bed because it's a nice, like, cozy place. And so that was supposed to be the parents' sort of domain. So they had a staircase put in, and it's like a 1930s semi-detached, you know, these big sort of bow window fronted semi-detached. And so anyway, the next project, a couple of years later, was to do the garden, and they were gonna, because it was a really tatty old garden. Well, when I say tatty, it was grotty grass that was really old and all scuffed up. And there's a garden shed. It was okay, but it needed a bit of renovation and stuff like that. And the fences were bigger. So basically, they had a landscaper in. It cost them the same price as doing the bedroom extension. This guy charged them £30,000 to do the garden.
wow.
They literally brought in diggers. They dug up the whole lot. The patio was all wobbly and bumpy and had weeds and it was all cracked. So they literally trashed it all, dug it all out and landscaped it and put a tiled sort of sloping terrace. It's not massive, the garden. I mean, it's like, just imagine a terrace house. It's probably about, I don't know, 200 foot long. And then it's, you know, as wide as the house, I suppose. But anyway, they did the garden shed, they put plants in, they built walls and like wooden edging all around the flower beds. I mean, it's really nice, but I can't see where £30,000 went. But anyway, that's enough. I could have bought half of that house opposite for that. I just can't see where that. But they put AstroTurf instead of grass. So Charlie can now play out all year long. And I mean, come rain or snow or hail, or he's out there with his football net kicking a ball.
Yeah.
And that's all he enjoys doing. Absolutely mad on it.
Yeah.
So listen, do you want to watch a little bit of this? Do you want to watch a little bit of this thingy? We won't go from the beginning. We won't go.
I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
Just before we get into the TV. You know, in your garden that you're developing, and you've got a lawn. You put some new seed down in, and you've got a lawn.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you stop when Napo goes to the toilet, when he goes to wee and cocks his leg? Okay. How do you stop it burning the grass?
You cannot stop it burning the grass. Simple as that. What you can do is you can get a product that. Have you got a garden? Is this what you're talking about?
Yeah, because I had new turf all put down because a lot of it was sort of burnt and whatever, and I tried it myself, and so and it was looking gorgeous, absolutely lovely, really nice. Did all the edging, put all the bark,
and Bella weed on it
and everything. Within no time at all, and then now it's getting burnt again, and then I'm thinking, oh my God, it's very secret. Have you got a secret as to how to stop it?
Well,
burning the grass.
I'm not a dog trainer, but I would suggest that you try and get her to go in one spot. So you take her on a lead, and then you give her a biscuit afterwards and all the rest of it. And try and get her to associate like one place with weeing. You can actually get a product that don't like, because I know lots of people have, if you've got neighbours that have got cats, they always come in your garden and make poo. And you can actually put something down that repels dogs and cats. You can actually also get a... is it just a rectangle of grass? Yeah, so she's got to go somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, what you said, that's a behavioural approach. And yes, I must admit, I tried it, as on a lead and everything, and it did appear to work. and then I gave up. Do you know what I mean? Because the rains came and the storms came, and I'm not going out there on a lead, making her go, sort of, in a circle. So I gave up, but it was appearing to work. So maybe if I go back and try that behavioural approach, it might go. But it's just so annoying because I had this beautiful green lush grass, and now once again, here we go, and it's got this. Sorry, Heather, I know you haven't got a dog, so it's sort of like.
If I go up with my camera and go in real close, the garden has got that bit of garden has got little bits where it's not properly sown through, and we need to put some more. I mean, it's a damn sight better than it was, and we just literally raked it all and then put grass seed down. But the problem is with dogs and cats is that when you live we've got a park, so like I can say to Napo, because he goes on my plant, he's killed one of my raspberry bushes because I haven't put the fence up. And that's the only thing I can think of. One day it was there, next day it's dead. Come on, we're talking about you. So I've got a lot of space.
And that's absolutely fine. I don't mind that because there's enough gaps between the shrubs, for her to have a good wee and the bark just soaks it up. That's absolutely fine. I say, oh yes, good girl, let's get you. But she doesn't always do that.
Have you ever seen the film? I don't think we watched it, Meet the Fockers, where the CIA guy trains the cat to go to the toilet and then flush it afterwards.
To go to the toilet. I don't think I'll go that far. But I didn't know whether you had a bit of a secret as to how to keep your green so lush.
To be honest, there is no real secret, except I've got a lot of trees, and so Napo tends to wee on a tree instead of weeing on the grass.
Oh, yeah.
And also, he's a boy, so he lifts his leg, and Bella's a girl, and she crouches. So
that's right.
They go slightly differently.
No worries.
Yeah, I know when I had my dog, he was the dog. He weren't a bitch, but he never knew how to cock his leg. He always squatted.
Well, Napo didn't till
squatted. I thought Have I got a date on it?
Yeah. I actually thought that at the beginning. I actually thought that at the beginning with Napo because it took ages for him to cock his leg. Absolutely, it was just like I was like, he's never gonna go. He's never gonna go properly. Oh, Teresa's on now. She's probably just back from work. Bless her. Right, we'll put. It's a shame because I Pauline probably wanted to see this. I don't know whether to go right back to the very beginning or to just go to the second series, which had the bit about all the buildings in it. Well, I can always show Pauline it later. Her and I watched the first series, I think. I don't know whether we only watched one or whether we watched all of them, but very fascinating. Well, we'll watch this bit. Well, this is volume 1, and we'll see what happens. See if you like it or not. You might go, oh, that's a load of dross. Let me just turn you around. Can you see?
Yeah.
Earth is not a spinning globe, but a flat and stationary plane with a firmament above it. Everything changes. The trusted voices and satanic scientific priests who once shaped our reality and understanding of the world are no longer reliable. Our first-hand experience of the Earth as a stationary realm is at odds with their fabricated narrative of space and spinning planets. The scarring of our land and the barbaric mining of Earth's once majestic giant trees is at odds with the history books and geological narrative. And the awake are left wondering, what on earth happened? If they've lied about the Earth, space, and the destruction of our flat realm, then how can we trust the official mainstream historical narrative? The historical narrative, like the heliocentric model, does not make sense. It doesn't add up. And all it takes is a closer examination, and their lies, which have governed our understanding of history and the world since our birth, begin to fall apart. Let's stir the mind with a few contemplations. We are told that the first true power tool was invented in 1895, when a German company combined an electric motor with a manual drill. The drill weighed 16.5 pounds and required multiple operators. It wasn't until 1957 that a company called Bosch began designing power tools in bulk that were both economical and powerful. So then how did our historical ancestors, a more primitive, underdeveloped people, design and build some of the structures we encounter?
How many times have you asked yourself that question when you've been to a monument or a great big building or a stately home? Or have you? Am I the only one?
Yeah.
Have you?
Yeah. I questioned it as to like the pyramids and stuff. I mean, they had, sort of great knowledge, there, but I haven't questioned it to say that it's not true.
No, and that exactly that. But I've gone to a stately home sometimes. You used to go to a lot of National Trust, and I've gone, wow, how did they build that? These, like Chatsworth. Have you ever been to Chatsworth with the massive fountain? Anyway, I won't talk anymore. Carry on.
All the gigantic monolithic stones we encounter that have been cut with such precision. Ask yourself, could you repeat this today with the arsenal of equipment we have at our disposal? And what about the magnificent ancient stepwells of the East? Stepwells, we are told, were multi-storied wells built by our primitive ancestors as ways to preserve the water supply during droughts. But look at the intricacy and complexity of these structures.
Can you see
Look at
okay?
the glory and the finesse.
Yeah.
Look at the geometric precision. All dug out and crafted from using hand tools. Yeah, right. What about the gigantic canal networks we find all over the world? The Erie Canal in America was allegedly built between 1817 and 1825. There were no civil engineers in America at this time. The people responsible for planning construction were novices, we are told. The canal is 12 meters wide and 4 meters deep. The Erie Canal spans 363 miles. But this was not just a case of digging each day for the Irish immigrants and their oxen companions. They had to fell hundreds of trees as they passed through the virgin forest. They had to build complicated aqueducts and locks. And they had to pass through the Niagara Escarpment, an 80-foot high wall of hard limestone. They had to use black powder to blast through this, we are told, as dynamite had yet to be invented. The canal spans 363 miles and was constructed over an 8-year period. This means that on average, 1 mile was completed every 8 days. What a record, especially since those and dynamite were yet to be invented. I can tell you now, the so-called early settlers of the Americas did not build these canal systems. And what of the grand and magnificent castles scattered across our realm? Did you know that most were designed and constructed without plumbing systems and methods to heat rooms properly? The royal and the elite of the past were content without having the accessible necessities of survival, just as long as they could live within the grand and the glorious, while the peasants, in their modest abodes, enjoyed warmth throughout the long, dark winters? I don't think so. And of course, there is the impossibility of the Great Giza Pyramid Complex. The pyramids, we are told, were constructed somewhere around 2500 BC. The Great Pyramid itself consists of 2.3 million blocks of limestone and granite, and its overall structure weighs 6 million tons. The largest granite stones weigh between 20 and 80 tons each. 20 tons is 20,000 kilograms. These blocks were carved from quarries with copper chisels and allegedly transported from 800 kilometers away. The so-called experts can only theorize that a vast amount of slave labor was required. Being gullible and falling for the official narrative of slave labor is one thing, but can someone please explain how the air shafts of the Great Pyramid align so neatly with the circumpolar stars? And then there is the curious case of star forts.
Look
what
at
the
that.
official liars of the world call bastion forts.
Which you don't see
Developed in
from the
late
ground.
15th and early 16th century, these forts, we are told, were designed during an era of gunpowder and the cannon. The geometric design offered a nation's military protection against blind spots during conflict. Of course they did. We all know that the best protection during war is to design a fort with such precise geometric patterning. Has any real historian ever stopped to think just how perfect the geometry is here? Our primitive ancestors did not have the technology to view structures from above, but they still managed to achieve this. Give me strength. There is no way. We could not produce such perfect geometry on this scale today. We've been fooled once again. We have been indoctrinated with a false historical narrative and timeline. And like the silly heliocentric model, all it takes is a closer look at this narrative and things soon start to fall apart and the lies become so blatantly evident. Because of their satanic lies, piecing together an accurate, honest historical timeline has become an impossible Rubik's Cube. The official narrative, a Pandora's box, only offering us tiny clues, half-truths, and deceptions. The stitchings of our true historical timeline have been loosened. The contents erased and muddled before we were even born into this world. And herein lies the problem. How to know where you are going if you don't know where you are in the first place. But you see, awakening is truly a gift. Once awake, we learn that we've always had the answers right in front of us. We've always had more than we know, but we had to regain our sight first before things started falling into place, before things started to make a little more sense. And here we are again, viewer, at the precipice of another great journey. What if I told you that before us there existed a civilization that was responsible for the most advanced technology ever developed, and that it was their understanding of the workings of our flat realm that was key to their innovation? And what if I told you that it is highly likely that our true history as a people only begun just over 200 years ago? Would you think of me as mad once again?
Yeah.
Do I sound as preposterous as when I first told you that the earth is flat? Perhaps. And that's why I need to show you. What I hope to show you is one of the greatest cover-ups of all time. It is on par with the heliocentric lie in its enormity and the impact it has upon humanity. And as I will try to show you, it is inextricable from the true nature of our flat realm Earth, and you cannot understand one without understanding the other. We cannot waste time, for we must journey in search of lost time.
So if we'd have watched the first series first, you would have probably got all freaked out and gone, "What on earth is this?" It was fascinating, really fascinating. But this,
Ça fait du bien.
this,
Quand on is shitty COVID-19 and so on, and when you see
so
an evening like that, putain,
who won?
huh? Djokovic,
Oh,
that is out. But, what a match! What a match!
sorry, we just
What a
we
match!
just got a happy
The
Johnny here.
ambiance and so on. And you forget all this fucking shit. And so
Hey,
on.
shh, be quiet! Don't swear. There are ladies in the house.
Oh, putain, what a match! What a match!
So yeah, so when we watched the first series, this guy's voice is a bit hypnotic. At least he's English and I can understand him, but he's got a very easy, not easy, but he's got a very simple way of explaining complicated things, if you know what I mean. So we watched the first series, and that explains to you about the flat bit. But we'll just carry on and see what you think.
What's his background?
Do you know? I don't know, because he's on. I found this on Telegram actually, And I follow this guy called Phil Godlewski, who's really good. And he was the one who did the documentaries about JFK. And what he does is he plays these videos, but then he stops them and then they discuss and he explains. And, you know, he's obviously researched it parallel to the guy who's doing it. And so I went online and found it, but they removed it from YouTube. I think it's on BitChute. That this is on Telegram, and he's called UAnon. So I have no idea who this guy is. I will try and find out a bit more about him, actually. But he doesn't sound old, for one thing. He sounds quite young. I would say probably no more than 40. What would you say? He's got quite a young voice.
Sound old.
He sounds to me like a history geek who's kind of got sort of seen some, you know, how some of these kids are really analytical. They've gone to university, he's obviously looked at something and thought, hello, that doesn't make sense. And he's got into this because the research is amazing. And sorry, I've got some whistling bloke in the background now. Darling.
Yes. He sounds very happy.
He is very happy. He's really happy because he's watched like 4.5 hours of tennis, and his man won. Well, he liked both of them, didn't he?
Oh, wow, then.
So he's very happy. Djokovic won. Yeah.
Oh,
So he's in the final, which is on Sunday, and the guy who might be playing him could be a Greek fella. What's the Greek guy, darling? Who's the Greek guy? Is he number? What?
He's number 23.
Yeah, but what?
He's Greek.
I know he's Greek.
Which country? From Greece. He's from Greece.
He's number 23 in the world, apparently. So, yeah, never heard of him before, but obviously with COVID, there's been a lot less tournaments, and people like Andy Murray are out. I mean, he's gone. He's retired. Federer's been knocked out. Darling, are you getting yourself a Magnum?
No.
Well, whatever you're doing, could you like get on with it, please? Because we're set.
Are you drunk or what?
No, we're watching a documentary and we can't hear because you keep coming in and cheering and whistling. That's the bell to call for apéro. It says appel pour apéro. So when you want a drink, you have to ring the bell and somebody comes and gets it. But it happens to be in my new kitchen. Oi!
Room service.
Room service. Well, it would be room service if there was anybody in the room, but there isn't. There's just us. Hello. What's happening?
What's happening?
Oh,
I'm going to bed.
are you?
Yeah.
So, has Jay White watched this documentary?
No, Johnny has not watched this documentary at all. I think he would. I don't know. I think he would probably, probably totally not enjoy it one bit. Napo, stay here, good boy. No, he just thinks it's all bonkers. What can I say? He's two-dimensional. He's a man, firstly, very traditional kind of man. So, you know, he's quite happy in the moment in his own little world.
Yes, and he'll accept history as he's known it. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, if you'd have asked me,
I'm a little bit. What is the suggestion? Given this documentary as the little bit, obviously, that I've seen, it is so. Yes, you know, I think that the architecture and the creativity is marvelled, you know, when you see it. But I've never questioned that it hasn't been true. So are they suggesting?
yeah. Oh, wow. Never thought about that because I hadn't thought about any of it. And it was only when we started watching, Paul and I watched the first one, and say she was the one that asked me first of all about Antarctica, and she said, "Can you find out?" So we were all talking about it, weren't we? Going on, and Bowie's there going, "Yeah, I went on a cruise to Antarctica," and you know, but if you'd have asked me the same sort of questions, I don't know, a year ago, I'd have probably said exactly the same. I think, well, what's the where are you going with it? What's the point of the thing?
Yeah.
But I'm up to episode 7. 8 hasn't come out yet, and it's got to a point quite far down. But we haven't actually got to the point yet of who he believes in his research. What I think he's saying is that in the 1800s, there was a reset of the world. So there were people like us, but more advanced than us 200 years ago. And there was this reset where, when you see the next bit of this episode, you'll see where the buildings and the questioning the roads and everything. And it's obvious that these buildings were created in another time and space. Now, we don't actually know whether it's a sort of a parallel, you know, universe to us. But what we do know is that there were humans, big, but they were bigger. There were huge. Everything was bigger. The trees were huge. At the end of the last documentary, talking about, I should have probably started from the very beginning, but then you'd have probably gone, "Oh, it's about flat Earth." But actually, it's more than that, because it's fascinating, the evidence that they've got to get to where they are, like the Grand Canyon and the geology of the rocks and what is the earth made of. Because I was big into geology at school, loved it. And we learned all about the different ages of rock and the Jurassic, the Cretaceous, the Pleistocene. But we only learn what we're told, and our teachers only learn what they were told, and so on. And so it depends who creates the history book. But we can carry on a bit, and then we'll stop again, and then see what you think. No, not necessarily aliens, but just another mankind which were wiped out in some kind of a monumental flood. Now, we haven't actually got to the 8th episode, but have you read the Bible, Jay? I haven't read the Bible, but I do know about Noah's Ark.
Yeah, I've read a lot of it, not all of it, which I remember an evangelist saying to this group, has anybody read a book? Has anybody, what's their favourite book? What's the most important book? Blah, blah. And then find out that actually I haven't read it from cover to cover. No, I haven't.
And no, and that's really not, is that really the most important thing? I mean, it's good intention rather than, whether or not you know every word by heart. But what's very interesting is that I've just watched another girl who's fascinated with the missing books of the Bible. And don't forget, I am not a Bible person. I'm not saying I don't believe in it. I'm just saying it's never been something I've focused on. But this woman, they say, in order to have masked our history, does this make sense? They being our predecessors, removed so many books of the Bible.
Books from the Bible, yeah.
Right. So
yeah, there is. Yeah, I mean that is talked about. That there are some books that didn't actually make it into the published Bible. Yeah.
And the reason they didn't make it into the published Bible, because clearly there was some reason why they wanted to mask the part of history. We don't know why, okay? yet.
No.
But this girl is talking about that I saw. I haven't watched them all because it's hard going when you don't know about all of it. You've got to pay attention. But it's very interesting how she says they've discovered more books that were left out of the Bible than were put in them. So in order to explain why the power drill was only invented in 1956, and these people, or what 1856, and these people managed to create these fantastic buildings and stuff. We kind of look at these things on a two-dimensional level. And we go, wow, that's amazing. And we take pictures and we stand in front of them, but we don't actually know who built them, because it's not possible that they could have been built 200 years ago or whatever. So there must have been some.
I don't know what Heather thinks, but
yeah, go on, Heather. What do you think?
I always tend to think, why now? You know, even when I'm working with the families, it's sort of like, why now has that happened? Why now? So I'm just wondering whether this documentary is being put forward because of the controversial issues about the virus now, in the sense of, are they suggesting that, you know, there's been a reset before, in the sense of this virus, this, you know, coronavirus, whatever it is like going to be a reset of human nature. And this is why the documentary is coming out now, to suggest that it has happened before. That's why I look for a question.
Okay, well, you're touching. If you were playing hide and seek, I'd say you're warm. Because what it's really digging into, it's not the COVID is not the issue. The COVID is the mask for what they are doing in the background to remove the bad people. Okay, if they did not do this, if they did not remove these, you know, satanic people, because it's all linked to the Bible, but the Bible's all linked to Satan. So when you watch the rest of it, you will see how stunningly fantastic and clever this has been. And so the idea is that they follow the astrological charts as well, but you're kind of touching on it, but it's not got anything to do with COVID. It's got, when they talk about the Great Reset on the politicians, Boris and all that malarkey, and Macron and Operation Mockingbird, the Great Reset is depopulation of the world to enable the wealthy people to thrive, and just like happened in the last perceived reset. So as we go through, you might have some more questions in a little bit of a while, because you will find it quite, I had to sort of stop, and I found myself with my mouth hanging open. So let's carry on a little. Heather, what do you think? Sorry, darling, you're sitting quiet at the top there.
So I'm taking it all in. You know, I totally agree, you know, with what James asking. You know, you think all these things now, why now? Why is it all coming out now?
Because it's programmed in the Bible, which has been taken apart and bits removed to tell the people, apparently, every so many thousand years there is a reset. We call it an ice age, a stone age, all these different ages that we were taught at school, you know. And I'm now thinking, oh my God, I was really good at geology, and it was all a big fat lie. When I say a lie, I don't mean a lie in terms of the rocks and everything. They're all there, and they're all in ages and all the rest of it. But the actual, how we arrived to have an ice age, how we arrived to have an iron age. The most fascinating part for me of this documentary, because I was never interested in this. I thought these people were a load of Fruit Loops. You see them in the street on a shopping centre on a Saturday with a table up going, this is, come and learn about flat earth. And I'm like, you're bonkers. You know, you seriously need your head giving a shake. And now I watch this guy, I think it's the way he delivers the information, I can understand it. Does that make any sense? So many people are so highbrow and so over my level of intellectuality that I find some things difficult to pay attention to. Does that make sense? Because I
still would like to know the credibility of this chap.
Well, it's interesting.
Anybody can put together, numerous things. I would,
But watch.
I'm interested, but I sort of think, okay.
But when you get to the end of this one episode, you can then just go, wow, that was interesting. I would definitely like to know more. I will message the chap who played the original series and see if I can find out who this guy is, so I can do a bit of research on him. But I have to tell you, it's been this film or this series has been played. It's had a lot, hundreds of thousands of views, and it's on some very influential channels, shall we say. This isn't in the category of the craziest of conspiracy theories, because of the way the guy researches and the way he puts it together. But leave a little bit of judgment until we've watched a bit more and see what you think.
This is a story about deception. It is also a story of endings and beginnings, of death and rebirth. And please bear with me. Due to the deceptions and falsities underpinning our historical narrative, this story cannot be told in a linear fashion. We need to go back and forth in time to really draw out something that brings us a little closer to the truth. It is also imperative to understand that, like much contemporary science, history as a discipline was corrupted a long time ago. At its most innocent, a lot of established historical narrative is guesswork. But at its worst, it is a set of lies agreed upon, as the so-called Napoleon put it so succinctly.
The hidden hand.
We are going to be digging in the dark. No historian will be there to help us. We are alone in this journey. Our journey is a hunt for things buried in plain sight. And things may become a little uncomfortable at times, but it is necessary. We have been living a comfortable lie for far too long now. Come on, jump in and put your seatbelt on. For to understand our place in the world, we need to do the unthinkable. It's time for us to take a journey back to the future.
Oh, that's so that's the first bit. Hang on. That's the first bit of that one, and then Okay, so that's the first one. The following is a spiritual sequel. So this basically is the spiritual. Oh gosh, I've gone right to the beginning now. The spiritual sequel of the first series, which was about explaining, and there was lots of. He produced an awful lot of evidence, shall we say, lots and lots and lots of evidence. So that was called What on Earth Happened? And then this is the lost history. So this is the first one that absolutely blew me away and made me think in a completely different way when I watched it. Very fascinating. Here he is. I'd love to know who he is.
Our journey begins in the unlikeliest of places. 19th century St. Petersburg. At the entrance to St. Isaac's Cathedral, the city cold, the early morning mists dissipating with the approach of the sun, and our boots caked in mud. The year is 1860, and while St. Petersburg stands regal and proud, its inhabitants are nowhere to be found. It is quiet, too quiet. The population of St. Petersburg in the 1860s was, we are told, roughly 500,000 people, and yet there is not a soul in sight. Where is everybody? The long shadow of Alexander Column gives us a clue as to the time of the sun's journey above this region. Long shadows only occur during morning or evening. It must be morning, but it appears that no one has surfaced yet. If we travel 400 miles across to Moscow, we see the same thing. Empty, quiet streets. In 1860, Moscow shared a similar population with St. Petersburg, roughly 500,000 citizens. But again, where is everybody? What about the rest of the world during this time period? Edinburgh, Scotland, 1840s. Copenhagen, Denmark. Dresden, Germany, 1860s. Rio in Brazil, 1860s. Toronto, Canada, 1860s. Athens in Greece, 1860s. And then London, finally, people. And what about Paris? People, life. The first photograph, we are told, was created in 1822. The art of photography relies on methods of juxtaposition, of comparison and contrast to deliver its message and sentiment. In these old photographs, we do not find the same deliberate techniques of juxtaposition that contemporary photographers craft into their art, but rather we find natural contrasts that are so important and central to navigating through our deceptive history. Contrast is a phenomenon, natural or artificial, in which meaning is generated and conveyed through the comparison of two opposing elements. When looking at 1860s Russia, there is an immediate contrast between the lack of population and the sheer size of these cities. Even in the 19th century, both Moscow and St. Petersburg are enormous. The infrastructure found in the photographs could hold a population well into the millions. Why are the cities so vast if the population was only 500,000 in each? Furthermore, the official narrative gives us a population that increases in a linear fashion from 1764. Many of the buildings we see here were built years before the photograph was taken. Did the Russians just plan well in advance? But it's when the population is introduced into these photographs that a new contrast emerges that is staggering. That is, between the people and the environment itself. It may be the reduced population numbers, or it may be the monochromatic starkness of the black and white images, but they present to us something that we've lived amongst our entire lives and never paid any mind to. That is, the enormity and impossibility of the architecture. As we engage with the industry and act of tourism, we journey from place to place and observe, taking it all in, learning, hearing, and being told what we are looking at and how it came to be. And standing in front of a structure like the Arc de Triomphe in Paris, we might even exclaim, wow, how did they do this? But the moment, inextricably wrapped up in the busyness of the scene, perhaps prevents us from really asking that question with sincerity. Standing in front of a structure like the Arc de Triomphe, while the crowd frantically takes pictures on their smartphones, makes it all a reality. And we conclude, before being shoved away by new tourists, well, they had to have done it somehow because I'm here and looking at it. During our indoctrination at school, we are seldom shown old photographs of the grand city scattered around our flat realm. And perhaps for good reason. Because when we marinate on images like this and are presented with the visual evidence of a very primitive Victorian people dotted around like grasshoppers within the shadows of the most magnificent, grandiose, brilliant architecture a human could ever imagine, we begin to have doubts. Indeed, how did they build this? The Arc de Triomphe is made from 36,695 cubic meters of limestone and weighs 95,407 tons, or just over 95 million kilograms. They tell us it took 12 years to build the giant arch in two different periods, between 1806 to 1814, and between 1832 to 1836. How did they transport this amount of limestone with the same horse and carts that we see in the photographs? Look closer at the four sculptures that adorn each of its sides. Look at the intricacy of the sculptures and the patterning of the ornamentation that frames the arch. Each section is perfectly repeated without any deviation or inconsistency. The first true power tool was not invented until 60 years after this arch was completed. They tell us this was crafted by hand. Is that even possible? And then there is the ceiling of the arch. Immaculate, 3D sculpted roses, perfect in their geometric symmetry. The nuance of the detail and finesse of each petal and cross-section borders is overwhelming. Look at the rest of Paris during this time. Again, a plethora of unbelievable, gigantic, and magnificent structures. The city's infrastructure glorious, and the people and their means of transport primitive, unsophisticated, and seeming not at all developed to the point of producing a city like this. The roads are improperly paved and uneven. They are dirty and muddy. We also see buildings during this period in which the architecture aligns with the inhabitants.
That's the Montmartre.
Buildings of misshapen proportions, less developed and refined, charming in their own way, but coarse in their use of wood and plaster. This is exactly the type of architecture we expect of a generation of horse and cart, a generation ignorant to the discoveries in technology that would follow in the years to come. Furthermore, at the time of this photograph, the arch is roughly 40 years old since its completion. Yet can you see how worn some of the parts of the structure are? We see weathering on the stone that suggests the arch is much older. As we approach the late 19th century, we see that the people of Moscow have finally decided to leave their homes and venture out into the streets. The infamous Red Square, now bustling with life. St. Basil's Cathedral and the Spasskaya Tower dominate the frame of the square. The construction of St. Basil's Cathedral began in 1555 and was completed in 1561, a mere 6 years. It suffered a huge fire in 1737 and underwent restoration over a 20-year period. But look at it. What a structure. Almost unreal and like no other. It is composed of thousands of red bricks and tin sheet metal that has been shaped into the distinctive onion domes we see. Look closer at the intricacy of the domes. How did they bend metal to achieve such precision and perfection in the 18th century? And again, if they had the skills and dedication to build a wonder such as this, then why are the conditions of the roads so poor and covered in mud? We see these incredible structures and buildings everywhere in 19th century photography. We have the wondrous Crystal Palace of London, a monstrous structure with the greatest area of glass ever seen in a building, and all constructed before England had automatic glass manufacturing. We have Westminster Abbey and Parliament. We have the old Euston Arch, constructed out of pure sandstone in 1837, and streets unpaved and full of mud. Why did these people not prioritize the streets they walked upon? The Funke, the domed masterpiece of Dresden, Germany.
Oh.
Battery, medium, connected to PJ.
Where's my sound on?
Is your battery low?
No, I don't
The
think so.
Frauenkirche, the domed masterpiece of Dresden, Germany. Its intricate and opulent splendor in direct contrast with the beat-up wagons and horse-pulled carts of the people below, a people dependent on the bare necessities, a people completely dwarfed by its size and majesty. The Library of Parliament in Ottawa, Canada, built over a period of 17 years, The first major settlers arrived in 1800, and at the time of construction, the city's population was under 20,000. Would a grand, glorious library really be a priority for settlers? Why does the building look like it's been cropped out of Europe and pasted into Canada? Even at the turn of the century, 40 years before Bosch economized the power tool, we have the old Penn Station in New York. Look at the size of this. Completely mind-blowing proportions. As we can see here in the photograph, each octagonal sculpted pattern on the arched dome ceiling is larger than one individual human. Look at the gigantic columns and detailed asantha sleeves decorating the tops of each pillar. They tell us this station took 6 years to build. 6 whole years. Yeah, right. Why are we so gullible? Even without access to modern power tools, printable construction pieces, and crane technology, we could not reproduce this today. And more importantly, we don't reproduce this type of architecture today. The official liars of our world have an umbrella term for this type of architecture that we see in North America. They call it historism. Historism is a term coined to describe a style of architecture that is revival in nature, or in other words, copies the style of another period in time. The grand arches and buildings with giant columns we see are built in the classical or Greco-Roman style. The cathedrals are built in the Renaissance and Gothic styles of medieval Europe. Components of these particular styles of architecture feature large spires, arched windows, towers, turrets, domes, arcaded arches, sculptures, enormous doors, circular geometric windows, columns, clock faces, and bell towers. Traces of this impossible architecture are literally found everywhere, in every city and across our world today. Some preserved and maintained, like the Parisian Arc de Triomphe and Notre Dame, and others lost and long forgotten to time, like the Euston Arch and the old Penn Station in New York. We as a people travel miles to take our own photographs of these wonders. But the photographers of the 19th century gift us with something they would never have expected to give a future generation: perspective. We see a primitive people against a backdrop of clearly advanced architectural. The official historians of the world tell us tales of Darwinian evolution and progression between time periods. The people that came after were always more advanced in their ways, refining and redefining the methods of the generation that came before. If the and industry during the 19th century was still the horse and car, then, as these photographs tell us, this style of architecture was just for those living in the centuries before it. Anyone thinking and questioning can immediately sense when looking at these photographs that something is rotten in Denmark, that something is off with the mainstream historical narrative. that something is not adding up. In a panoramic image of San Francisco in 1877, we see a collage of historicist architecture. We see columns adorning the entrances to very regal buildings that stand out like sore thumbs from some of the timber shacks surrounding it. We see Gothic spires and towers in the distance. We see domed cathedrals and buildings. We also see just how sprawling and huge the city has become. In 1846, there were under 500 Mormon settlers living on the area of land in which we now call San Francisco. It was frontier land and ready for the taking. Between 1848 and 1849, with the start of the California Gold Rush, the population increased from 1,000 people to 25,000 people. 28 years later, this panorama was taken. The population at this time, we are told, was getting close to 200,000. Who in their right mind would believe this story? Does this look like a city of 200,000 people without any modern technology, power tools, automatic manufacturing, electric motors? A people in a strange, unfounded land, just making their mark. Do we really believe that a burgeoning people built this entire city in just 30 years? And again, such quietness, such stillness. This is a photograph of an empty city. Where are all the people? The shadow of the post here tells us that it is not the early hours of the morning. Short shadows only appear toward midday. A city of this scale at noon should be bustling with life. But there is not a single person in the shot of this panorama. The only life we see is that of a horse without any master in sight. It seems highly unlikely that all the people were told to stay indoors because a cityscape photo shoot was taking place. And this silent scene becomes all the more eerie when we consider that there is intention behind the lens. Someone was there, standing at a vantage point and taking this photograph. But who and for what? And what are the chances that in the 19th century, during similar decades, we see deserted Russian, European, and North American cities photographed like this? And then only a few years later, we find the same locations bustling with people. A people clearly incapable of building the architecture found in these cities. And what to do with these photographs? If we accept the narrative and these strange anomalies, then we stop here and get back to our busy lives. But the narrative we've received is not the truth. And we shouldn't accept any narrative, no matter how official and certified it is, unless it makes sense. The people we see in these photographs and their early ancestors could not have built the magnificent architecture we see. It is an impossibility. Come on, jump in. We must venture further into these cities and look a little closer. There must be some clues waiting to be uncovered that helps us understand why these cities are empty. Wait, what's that you say? You want to wipe the mud from your boots first? Do not bother. It's a waste of time. Come on, jump in and let's go. For it is the mud that offers us some small clues as to what could have occurred during this time period.
Are you in the slightest bit interested?
I'm just gobsmacked.
It's absolutely, to me, fascinating. I'm not really questioning where we're going or how we got there. It fascinates me because I have never looked at things like that, and now it all kind of, you go, well, wow. What do you think, Jane?
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. I mean, yes, I agree. It is fascinating. I'm thinking, okay, because as I was thinking it, he actually said it. And that is, who took these photographs? You know,
Yeah.
why? Firstly, who took it, and why that particular shot was taken, that collection. Do we not think that there were geniuses in that time, just as there is geniuses coming up with things in present day? I'm not on the line as to thinking that it could not be done in that time, even with a horse and cart and whatever. I'm just thinking, you know, strange things happen, architecture, you know, I see things today that I think, oh my God, how on earth did they do that? How on earth did they do that? And that's today. So, you know, our focus today is a lot more in our pleasures, if you like, where perhaps in those days, you know, life was very different. Their focuses, they didn't have TV and you know, sort of things to take their mind into different things. So, yeah, I'm curious and I'm interested, but I'm not questioning in the same way, you know, sort of. I'm sat on that fence.
But you've got to admit that there are some things, like he says, that just don't add up.
Yeah.
And the more you go in, you might. I mean, I'm not. It's not my place to change anyone's mind, but it is quite fascinating when somebody presents information, and at the end of the day, you know, he's obviously not necessarily started out. He's obviously gone on this journey, and like he says, why do we accept things that don't make sense? So that's just my theory. When I started watching it, I was it was like watching a really good thriller. You don't want to, you want to binge watch it because it's fascinating. Okay,
of course.
Let's see what happens here.
Christchurch, New Zealand.
But obviously,
Suffered an
he suggested
earthquake
it doesn't
that
make
left
sense to him.
Yeah, well, obviously, in the beginning when he started out, he probably never realised that it would take him 30 episodes to put together all his information. But I want Lynn to be able to see this. I'll send her the link because this is the big earthquake in New Zealand. So let's carry on.
A lot of the city in chaos, destroying buildings and infrastructure, and leaving over 50,000 homes without power. As a result, there were collapsed houses, ruptured water mains, flooding, and fires due to disrupted electrical lines. Due to the strong ground motions and intense shaking, part of the city experienced a strange phenomenon known as soil liquefaction. Sand boils emerged from asphalt roads, toppling and sinking cars, and causing boulders to fall from hills, resulting in more home damage. Soil liquefaction occurs when saturated soil loses its strength and stiffness in response to an applied stress, such as shaking or other sudden changes, such as a strong explosion. Loose saturated soil or sand has a tendency to compress when a load is applied, but in the event of a stress, such as shaking or an explosion, we see the opposite. The soil tends to dilute, and the result is treacherous quicksand or quick clay. The land turns to liquid, causing structures of heavy mass, such as buildings, infrastructure, and cars, to start sinking, topple over, or collapse. It can also affect dams and bridges. Turbidity currents can also form huge landslides that are impossible to stop. In the worst case scenario, entire cities may be destroyed. As you can see, liquefaction can move entire areas of land. The mud can rise dramatically and rapidly, and its destructive force is unstoppable. It is a well-documented phenomenon. The 1964 earthquake in Nagata, Japan, caused liquefaction, and we can see the effects very clearly in these photos. The same here with the 1964 Alaska earthquake. Buildings toppling, cars sinking, infrastructure collapsing. Once the stress has subsided, the soil begins to solidify once again, and we can see the aftermath. Uneven, muddy streets remain where there was once road paving. Returning to photographs of 19th century cities, we see a similar situation here. The roads are unrefined and full of mud. We see unsophisticated, uneven, coarse, and muddy roads everywhere against a backdrop of refined, sophisticated, and magnificent architecture. Could these cities have suffered a similar fate of soil liquefaction that we see in more recent times? Perhaps. But unfortunately, muddy roads is not enough evidence to base any conclusions.
See, Jane? Not enough evidence.
Children ask the most vital of questions, and adults, in their foggy stupor, usually provide the most unsatisfactory answers, often regurgitating learned nonsensical information that leave the child's imagination unfulfilled. Squelching along these muddy 19th century roads, observing their surroundings, a child may ask, why did they build the windows so low to the ground? And what an excellent question. Yes, why indeed did they build windows on ground level? For you see, the people we see in these photographs, sadly, did not build this architecture. And maybe some of them, at some point in their busy day-to-day life, are seeing windows partially below ground level. First floor entrances raised from the ground level. Steps leading down to entrances below ground level. We can find this in almost every major city across our realm, in both old photographs and when we walk in the streets today. And what does it tell us? That a society with access to modest construction tools and horse and car constructed their infrastructure by first spending countless amounts of hours and energy clearing land with a depth of over 3 meters to begin their construction. Building basement floors is incredibly hard work. Since the 20th century, large powered excavation machines, such as backhoes and front-end loaders, have reduced the time and manpower needed to dig a basement dramatically as compared to digging by hand with a spade. Perhaps you could say that our historical ancestors were just that dedicated to the architecture they built. And you could say that many of the sunken buildings we see are actually due to elevations and depressions in the natural landscape. The official narrative, which is always full of inconsistencies, perhaps would suffice if it was not for contemporary excavation. When we look at photographs such as this, it immediately dawns upon us that what we are seeing are windows and doors 2 to 3 meters below the ground surface. Why are there windows and doors underground? What is this that we see in our cities? Natural soil accumulation over time? Geologists have never been able to ascribe a consistent value to worldwide natural topsoil accumulation because it is impossible. Some regions of our realm experience consistent topsoil accumulation, whereas other regions actually experience consistent erosion. Many historians and archaeologists have noted that many cities over the centuries have been destroyed through war and natural phenomena such as earthquakes, volcanic ash, and flooding. Aren't these just the layers of previous civilizations?
Look at that. Look at that. Right down here. That's fascinating. This is fascinating.
It
No,
is the style of the
they are
time.
not. We see over and over again whole floors of buildings consistent with the architecture existing above the layer of ground.
You see that in England a lot, like cities like Birmingham, where they build car parks. I remember when we used to go down to the old silver works where our workshop was, and right opposite the building, they were excavating a car park, and they were building like 3 layers underground, and then obviously like a big multi-story thing, and the hole was vast underneath. And looking back, I never even registered, but I remember that there were floors below. You know, there was like that, exactly like that. That's exactly what it looked like. And I've never really thought about it before, but it's, you know, see what happened, what he says. Look at that. It's crazy. You wouldn't.
You see, what lies beneath is not the unfamiliar traces of previous generations, but of the same generation that built these structures. And once you really see this kind of sunken, buried infrastructure that exists in such prevalence across our world, you can never unsee it.
But is that not just a
We
style
see
of
that the
building in
foundations
that
of old
time?
churches are
we
actually the
changed our
original
style.
first
No, but
floors
what they-
with consistent
what
I
he
can't
said-
see what's so strange about it.
Because what he said was excavating underground, building a basement foundation, if you like, underground. Why would you waste all that time and effort building floors below ground when you're only using a shovel? That's what he was implying, that we're still at that stage where there's no power tools and there's no diggers and there's no. We'll carry on. We'll carry on.
entrances and windows.
We lost the sound.
We see mosaics unearthed.
Oh,
We see pillars, columns, and arches that were originally much larger, and it was the layer of soil that reduced their size, as if they weren't big enough to begin with.
Sorry, that's a bit annoying on the right.
Unlike with the
right-hand side,
1964 earthquake in Nagata, Japan, we also find many so-called ancient structures that are leaning, as if at some point the soil beneath these structures loosened and liquefied. We have the Sahersen Church Tower and Our Dear Lady at the Mountain Church Tower in Germany, the Tiger Hill Pagoda in China, the Leaning Tower of Neveyansk in Russia, the Leaning Temple of Huma in India, Oud Kirk in the Netherlands, the Tower of Zaragoza in Spain, and, of course, the Tower of Pisa. The official liars of the world try to justify the buried and tilting structures we see, filling our heads with stories of antiquity and ever-changing geology. But it becomes trickier for them when we turn our attention to America. If we are to believe their narrative, then all of the buildings we see in 19th century photographs of the burgeoning American cities are newly constructed. Why do we see famous structures such as the Washington Capitol building with consistent infrastructure that buries very deep into the ground? And again, the inconsistencies.
So this is recent because this is when they were, I think this is about a year ago, when they were dismantling these tunnels that they found underneath the White House. And this is what they discovered, because I've seen other pictures of this, and it's exactly like that. And from the air, it's amazing. It's almost the same height below as it is above the ground level, and all the steps go upwards.
Do not add up. Why would an underdeveloped people waste resources, energy, and time constructing the foundations of the Capitol building to be consistent with the column style we find above the surface? The foundations did not have to feature columns. Columns, we are told, are a stylistic choice, not a functional one. So why would they do this? In a nutshell, they wouldn't. We see images that suggest that the
Thanks.
people of the 19th
Yeah, I'll go
century
I'll go
were
put it on.
actually concerned with moving a lot of the vast amount of mud we see,
Look at that.
leveling the ground and excavating existing structures.
Russia's the most fascinating to me with that building with all the balls and the turrets on it.
The consistency and prevalence of buried architecture across our realm indicate that whatever happened was a worldwide event, despite regional differences in natural topsoil accumulation and erosion. And there is no official narrative explanation that justifies the buried architecture we see. No explanation provided to justify the amount of mud we see in 19th century photographs of our cities. On the roads, mud piles from clearing, the roads uneven, the land ravaged, but the architecture grand, perfect, and intact. Applauded by literary scholars for his use of fog as an opening simile and metaphor to paint a portrait of London as a corrupted hub amidst burgeoning industrialization. Many often overlook that Charles Dickens's 1852 novel Bleak House actually opens with a different image. London, Michaelmas term lately over, and the Lord Chancellor sitting in Lincoln's Inn Hall. Implacable November weather, as much mud in the streets as if the waters had but newly retired from the face of the earth. Liquefaction caused havoc across Christchurch and the Garter, but these were isolated earthquake events, and only portions of each city were affected. It is not possible for there to have been huge, simultaneous earthquakes around the world during a similar period. Or is it? Even Wikipedia tells us that liquefaction can occur naturally or artificially from an earthquake or other sudden change in stress condition.
Wow,
Even if
look
this
at
was
that.
the case, we do not see the same structural damage to the buildings in the 19th century like we do in cases such as Christchurch and the Garter. Most of the buried architecture we see is intact. It is either sunken or the ground level has been raised at least 3 meters, sometimes in a uniform manner, and other times partially buried in rolling mud hills, as if there were huge landslides. The strange case of the buried architecture provides the following conclusions: that what lies beneath are not the remains of previous civilization. More often than not, the buried structures are consistent with the architecture we see above ground. That the structures are much larger than originally suspected, and therefore they are even more of a construction impossibility for a Victorian generation of horse and car, and those existing before them. That natural topsoil accumulation and soil liquefaction are not satisfactory explanations for what we see here. Whatever took place had to be something much larger and widespread, such as a natural or artificial earthly cataclysm of sorts. As many of the photographs show, many citizens of the 1800s were responsible for moving much of the mud, leveling the ground, and excavating buildings, which suggests that whatever happened had happened very recently in their past. The complete absence of a reasonable mainstream justification for the buried architecture we see suggests that the controllers of our realm are deliberately trying to hide whatever happened. And what of the deserted cities we see in the earlier photographs? If these cities were truly empty, then we must ask why. We must also ask how all the people got there in the end. In the space of 30 or so years, we see a city go from barren to bustling. Interestingly, it is Charles Dickens and 19th century literature more generally that offers some clues. Two central themes run throughout 19th century Victorian literature: that of marriage and female chastity, and that of orphans and adoption.
This is fascinating.
Many of the fictional characters we've come to love over the years are orphans. We have Oliver Twist and Pip from Great Expectations. We have little orphan Jane Eyre and Heathcliff from Wuthering Heights. We have Mowgli from The Jungle Book, Cosette from Les Miserables. We have Heidi, Rapunzel, Peter Pan, Snow White. We have Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn and Anne of Green Gables. And these books were of their time as far as orphan prevalence goes. The only issue is that these novels romanticize the orphan as a figure dislocated from society by default, and therefore paved their life's path as one of unforeseen opportunity. This was not reality. The theme of marriage and chastity that we find in so many 19th century literary works, such as those by Jane Austen, the Brontes, George Eliot, Dickens, Thomas Hardy, Leo Tolstoy, Victor Hugo, and more, was nothing more than carefully disguised, well-written propaganda, with the sole purpose to solidify and justify a social value framework that would separate children from their mothers. Children born outside of marriage or wedlock were regarded as illegitimate, meaning they did not have a legal status. Illegitimate children was a serious stigma throughout the 19th century. The majority of employers would not hire women with an illegitimate child. Many unwed mothers with illegitimate children ended up without a home, in poor health, starving, exhausted. Their only place of refuge would be the workhouse, where they would carry out the most unpleasant duties. In some places, women with illegitimate children were singled out and had to wear a special uniform, which alerted everyone to their status as an unmarried mother or fallen woman. As a result, a vast amount of orphanages and foundling institutions were established. This is the London Foundling Hospital that was very active in the 19th century. Look at the size of it. Charles Dickens was obsessed with this place.
Fascinating.
Inspiration, they say.
Where did they come
The
from?
official narrative tells us that an estimated 4,500 women handed over their children to this huge building.
Where are the men?
But this was just one institution. Wikipedia gives us a partial list of over 64 orphanages that were founded in the UK, during the 19th century. The list is only partial, and most of them agree it is almost impossible to establish figures that really do justice to just how many orphans there were during this period. Their footprint did not enter the record books. It formed in the mud and was then washed away. It wasn't just the UK. This was a worldwide phenomenon. New York City had 4 foundling asylums alone that processed thousands of children annually. By the beginning of the 20th century, Italy was reporting 32,000 children per year. Spain and Portugal were reporting 15,000 annual foundlings. Before 1860, 374,000 recorded infants were processed by the asylums in Milan, Naples, and Florence alone. Historian David L. Ransell states that Moscow was receiving between 16 and 18,000 infants annually by the 1880s, and sending over 10,000 of these each year to outlying villages for care. In 1882, there were all told 41,720 foundlings from the Moscow home, living with 32,000 foster families
Where are the men?
scattered throughout 4,418 villages. A dozen villages had over 90 fosterings each. One thing that is often overlooked is that there were a series of laws passed in the 1800s, making it almost impossible for unwed mothers to keep their babies. The 1833 Poor Law Reformation introduced bastardy clauses that shifted the entire responsibility for the illegitimate child onto the mother. Social stigma meant that she would not be able to provide care for her child and would be forced to hand them over to the authorities, or worse. Advertisements for adoption or nurse care became popular in newspapers. And, as many scholars have pointed out, these were a front for what was termed baby farmers, or paid murder. As Dorothy L. Haller states, the adverts may have been misleading to the general public, but read like a coded message to unwed mothers. No references are asked for, and none are offered. The sum of 15 shillings a week to keep an infant or a sickly child was inadequate, and a sickly child and an infant under 2 months were the least likely to survive and the cheapest to bury. Infants were taken, no questions asked, and it was understood that for £12, no questions were expected to be asked. The transaction between the mother and the baby farmer usually took place in a public place, on public transportation, or through a second party. No personal information was exchanged. The money was paid, and the transaction was complete. The mother knew she would never see her infant alive again. Most children, however, were not murdered, but were dropped off at the doorsteps of orphanages or the workhouse. All children taken into these institutions were given entirely new identities. They were provided for with shelter, food, and clothing temporarily, and then sent off to workhouses or another location. Photographs in the 19th century were scarce, but towards the end of the century, we see more photographs, and the last continent to experience such mass exodus of orphans was the United States. And it is here that we see evidence of the orphan trades. The first group of these orphans arrived in Michigan in 1854. And from that moment on, the movement shipped hundreds of thousands of children across the states until it ended in 1929. Officially, there were over 97 institutions involved in orphans and orphan trades in the 19th century. And again, this was not just the United States. Annie Macpherson will go down in history as a woman who scammed more than 100,000 foundlings and shipped them from the United Kingdom to Canada, New Zealand, and South Africa, and even to the outer edges of the earth in Australia, so that they could be sold into child labor. Why do we see so many photographs of orphans in workhouses? Why are they working with machinery created for adult use?
That got
Were
me.
there not enough adults?
That got me. Why did the children, the little tiny children, they used to say it was because the machines, they could get underneath the machines.
That's right. Their hands were small enough to clean in between.
But there you can see them climbing to reach the bobbin wheels, which are clearly made for an adult size.
During this time to carry out this work. And then there is the strange case of the burgeoning American amusement parks at the turn of the 20th century. In addition to rides and exhibits, many of these parks featured an unusual attraction: infantoriums. Visitors of these parks could stroll around with ice cream and swing by these stations, a visit equivalent to that of a fully functional neonatal intensive care unit, complete with incubators filled with sleeping premature babies. History has been kind to Martin Cooney. Touted as a hero, Cooney was the German mind behind the incubators. His first encounter with premature babies, we are told, was at the 1896 World's Fair. He knew immediately that the exhibition would save babies' lives. The technology to keep premature babies alive was expensive, and he knew the public would pay to see the babies in incubators.
Really?
He would charge an entrance fee at the amusement parks to generate funds to help these babies live. Nurses tended to the babies as an enraptured public looked on. Like any other amusement, the premature baby exhibits included carnival barkers who tried to lure the public to come and see the babies. I don't know about you, but I find something very off about these incubators. Advertisers featuring living babies. A lot of the fairs where Cooney showed his babies also featured eugenics exhibitions. Eugenics is a field of corrupted pseudoscience that endorses selective breeding to improve the genetic quality of the human population. Eugenics was inspired by Darwinism and was a driving ideology that fueled the Nazis. Why are people paying to see living babies? As
Boris Johnson's father, Stanley, wrote a book about eugenics. I think it was him.
if they had never seen a living infant before.
He believes in
Did people at
depopulation.
the time not have their own babies? And where are these infants' parents? How did they have the technology in the 19th century to keep premature babies alive in such a way? Or is something off, once again, with the official narrative? There were 80,000
I guess it makes a change seeing a woman with a beard or something.
80,000.
80,000. Where are the
hundreds of
fathers?
thousands of orphans in the 19th century
Look
are
at them all.
just barely believable. Were women really
Mm.
that carefree? Did America even have the population numbers to justify 80,000 premature babies? We are not talking orphans here, but infants born prematurely. The narrative is not convincing
No.
or realistically fathomable. Where did these babies come from? More troubling is Cooney's background. As many historians have pointed out, he had no medical degree or training.
Huh.
His story is a very similar one of unconvincing philanthropy that we find surrounding some of our contemporary figures today that also do not have medical degrees. And then there is Marie Dressler, a Canadian silent film and Depression-era movie star. She adopted one of these incubator babies. Celebrities and adoption. The official narrative conveniently leaves us out of her story and tells us that she may have had a daughter who died as a small child. But the photographs suggest otherwise. Did she adopt her incubator baby at one of these fairs? Were the fairs a front for illicit adoption of premature babies? Even if they were premature, did that mean they had no parents? Who owned and was responsible for these parks? And what happened to the babies once they grew and left the incubators? If something feels eerily wrong about the entire narrative surrounding these parks and orphans, it's because we are not being told the truth. Why were there hundreds of thousands of parentless children in the 19th century? Where did they come from? They were relocated all over the world. Europe, America, Russia, Australia, Canada. Why? Especially when most still had a living parent. If pregnancy out of wedlock was such a social stigma that resulted in such trauma, why would so many people put themselves in that position in the first place? Did the government really care about social morality enough to pass laws? And all the effort to build and maintain orphanages and orphan relocation networks, would this not burden governmental finances and administration systems? It certainly would have. But you see, there was a greater purpose behind the government's worldwide agenda: repopulation. The social narrative of chastity was nothing more than propaganda and justification for stealing children. The reason we see empty cities in the early 19th century is because they were in fact empty, void of population. And the reason they are bustling 30 years later is because orphans were shipped into these cities to repopulate them. You see, in the early 19th century, there was a worldwide reset of sorts through depopulation and then repopulation. The people we see in these photographs did not build this architecture. Architecture and orphans all signal a looming darkness. There is a great black cloud in front of us, and I won't lie, we are heading right into the heart of it. And like I said before, we do not have much time. Come on.
This is
It's time for me
amazing.
to honor my promise and take you back to the future.
This is we can't watch anymore. It's too late for you all, but it's fascinating, isn't it? Huh?
Very interesting.
I mean, then it goes on to all about the clocks and time and astrology and energy and power, and about electricity and light and how, you know, if you think about the Paris exhibition, they had moving pavements and they had lights everywhere and it was all, you know, fabulously lit up, and yet homes were only just getting electricity. And it just goes on, and it's just fascinating.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how you feel, but I think it makes me want to carry on and see what happens. And no matter how many times you watch it, you always see something different. But you know, you look at all those orphans, you go, oh my God, and the literature and all that. It all kind of, it's all there. It's all in plain sight, but we just don't join the dots, really. But when you see the bit about the towers and the chateaus and the turrets with the, you know, the energy and it goes into Mercury and vortexes and how they created free energy. It's just totally fascinating. I think it's totally fascinating anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree. It is fascinating. It does make you think.
I haven't got all the answers, neither has he, but it certainly stimulates you into wondering. The bit about the babies and the incubator thing. Well, that's freaky. That is freaky. Anyway, there we go. So
I feel like now, if I go in Paris, I'm not going to look at them buildings the same.
Oh no, you must. Yeah, look at this, fascinating.
I'll go and just have a look.
Yeah, for all the sunken windows, all the windows below ground. People used to say to me, I used to say, because I ask all sorts of questions. I've always been like that. And something else that's fascinating, I'll tell you in a minute, but I used to walk around and I'd say, well, why are there windows on the floor at the ground level? Oh, well, that's where they used to deliver the coal. And so I was thinking, okay, fine, that's fine. You know, but then hang on a minute, we didn't have coal fires until a certain period, and yet these buildings were built well before that. But the other few months ago, we were talking about, I think I remember saying to you that when I was a little girl, my granddad bought me a book called Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World. And it was about, and each chapter was about a different sort of phenomenon. Like, for example, I think I've still got the book somewhere, actually. I must look it up. The frogs falling out the sky, you know, hailstones the size of tennis balls, and walnuts, you know, random things that would be sort of swept up into the atmosphere and then frozen, if you like, and then dropped down in another place, like sand from the Sahara and things like that. And then there was a chapter on Loch Ness Monster and Bigfoot, and he was he lived in Bali, in Sri Lanka, when he retired, but he was one of these kind of adventuring guys. And I was watching something on YouTube the other day, or Telegram or whatever, and they mentioned him and they showed a picture of him when he was really young, what he looked like. They were talking about Nikola Tesla and the Tesla energy and how this energy is produced and it's free. It can be free because it can be created through these what they call towers without antennae, and it's only commercialism and greed, if you like, that's made electricity free, that's made electricity and power cost money. We all have to pay money to watch a thing go round in our electricity bill. And a couple of years ago, or maybe at the beginning of lockdown, I remember someone saying about power. And I said, wow, we've got our electricity bill and can't believe how much it's gone up. And I go, but does anybody really, this is me, does anybody know what a kilowatt hour is? And do you know how many it takes to boil a kettle? I mean, I'm not intelligent. I never went to university. I'm not a scholar.